Good evening, everybody. My name's Brian Burke, and with me is the man himself, Sam Shehab. It's Monday, it's 6 o'clock. That means we're going to have a fun conversation about some interesting immigration issues. Right, Sam?
I agree 100%.
Okay, well, what are those issues going to be? Number one on the list, it's the ACICS. It's the American Council for Independent Colleges and Schools. They've been disavowed by the Department of Education, and we're going to talk about the interesting immigration impacts on that. Additionally, the USCIS Ombudsman had a talk a little bit over a week ago, let out some data. We're going to talk about what it means and if it means anything at all. So stick around, and we will be right back.
All right, so the ACICS lost its accreditation. And obviously, there was a press release by USCIS forewarning those who may have attended an ACICS accredited school to look into the impact of that loss of accreditation on H-1Bs, I-140s, etc. And a little bit of history maybe on the ACICS.
Yeah, so generally speaking, in the United States, there's no national body that handles the accreditation of colleges and universities. It's handled by like a patchwork of them, but in order to be a legitimate one, you have to be recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. And ACICS, up until recently, was one of them. ACICS is a historical institution, dates back to 1912. And basically, they've had schools associated with them, getting their being accredited through them, since that time. And, why is it important to be accredited in the United States? Well, at the very least, for immigration purposes, for your I-140, for example, if your school is not accredited, the government won't, consider it relevant for the purposes of an I-140. And for the H-1B master's cap, your master's degree must come from an accredited school.
And I see to your right is the decision disaccrediting the institution.
Yeah.
So this organization has been in business since 1912. So this is not an organization that started recently, but it appears to have kind of shrunk in size or effectiveness as with the passage of time. And the first time they've lost their accreditation, at least.
They got attacked kind of during the, I think it was during the Obama presidency where.
Yeah, so in 2015 or so, there was a decision by the Secretary of Education to remove the accrediting authority from them. And then they went to court in 2016 because the Department of Education didn't do a good job reviewing their documentation. And the revocation was overturned by the court, and they got a provisional 3 years, and then they got a little bit more time, and then this time when they looked into them, they found even that they haven't addressed any of the concerns, and they cite all kind of violations. One of the big one for me that got my attention is there's a university called Reagan National University, RNU. It is an ACICS accredited institution, but it was not in operation, did not have students, did not have faculties, and did not have a physical presence.
Yeah, well,
a paper university that was accredited. Other universities that created this problem by lack of oversight by this agency is Virginia International University. And then those guys, looks like they renamed themselves as Fairfax University of America.
Yeah. Well, it's it's something that's when you look into it, it's something to note. When they first ACICS first got disaccredited, their accreditation was challenged back in 2015, 2016 range. The stat is they had 237 schools which they were responsible for, with 361,000 students. And by the time they were done, it was 27 schools and 5,000 students in the country in total. So it was an organization that was kind of on its last legs. And if these are the schools that they were accrediting at the end, boy, howdy, I can see why. Well, I guess the story, the numbers tell is any school that was worth its salt kind of, left ACICS, sometime between 2016 and present. Right, and this is not a story. This is a story we touched upon before. We've heard about this before, and they lost their accreditation. It came back, and here we are.
And just to kind of give everybody a background, so everybody, of course, we're talking about the immigration consequences. We really don't care about the history, but it's always good to kind of understand the bigger picture. Accreditation equals funds from the federal government in financial aid for these students, which the money goes to the schools. So the schools make money because government funds students to go to their schools, and therefore it's a big deal. It's a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars that these universities receive from the government to educate people. And if these institutions are not doing a good job and this accrediting agency is not doing a good oversight, obviously it's a lot of money being wasted or not being put to an effective use for the students. The ultimate people who are damaged are the students, whether it's foreign or U.S. Based, when you go to a school that's not doing a good job teaching you, because obviously there's not a good oversight. So that's really the background. Let's dive into impact on what we do for a living, which is immigration law. And maybe we can zoom in on that.
Well, so the effective date of the final effective date of the decision is 8/19/2022. So basically, that's sort of the important point, right? And the number one thing that's important for that is that if your degree was not issued by one of these ACICS schools before they lost their accreditation, basically, it's not good for immigration purposes. I would not use it for an I-140, and I wouldn't use it to support an H-1B master's cap because the government won't allow you to do that if they catch it. And they probably will, considering there's a press release on the subject on the USCIS website. Additionally, it has impacts on people who are in post-graduation benefits from these schools. For example, people who are on OPT, applying for STEM OPT, USCIS has explicitly said that we're going to deny, your STEM OPT EAD if your DSO authorization was signed after 8/19. So there's that. Additionally, there's implications for people who aren't applying for benefits but already have them. For example, OPT and STEM OPT. Those folks, there's some reporting requirements for both of those, and it requires you to report to your school. If your school is defunct, the biggest one of the ACICS schools being Stratford University, if you have nobody to report to, I guess your OPT and STEM OPT EAD, there's a definitely concern there. And the answer for some might be to, just change schools, but something we've known for a long time is that if you transfer your SEVIS record to another school, it eliminates, your OPT EAD, your STEM OPT EAD, and things like that. It's a refresh.
So let's kind of zoom in on this. Obviously, a lot of the people that listen to us are going through the green card process, but I'm sure they have friends and relatives, and maybe some people. Kids who are graduating from school are less likely to learn about these things until after the fact or learn. So spread the word if people have a STEM OPT from these universities. And I couldn't put my hand on a clean list. So I think everybody needs to go back to their school. I mean, there is a list out there, and once we find out, we'll share it. But I couldn't grab one.
Yeah, well. People are going to know who. There's a lot of schools that left the ACICS. I think the inevitable question, though, for me, Sam, is what happens if I got is there any negative impact, any sort of negative on me if I have a degree from one of those schools?
Well, it's emotional, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And emotion plays a big part in immigration law. We've seen that.
Well, for sure,
we've seen it for sure, and during these adjustment rash when they were looking at the universities and.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point. I've been at green card interviews, and twice now, where the officer they pull a question from their pocket, not in the literal sense, but they say, "Hey, have you ever attended School X? A school that was deemed a scam or of some sort of way problematic by the government in the past." And they can raise all sorts of questions regarding fraud or misrepresentation, because if they believe the school is illegitimate, they can believe the students attending those schools aren't properly abiding by their student status. You can actually have legitimate questions, for people who have graduated from them in the past.
Is the STEM OPT immediately invalid?
Well, I was reading. It raises a serious. If your school goes under, STEM OPT has some serious reporting requirements. Sam, you're supposed to basically notify them when you change the jobs. You're supposed to give them a new I-983 when something changes at your job. I don't see how it can continue. I mean, I think that's something you have to talk to an attorney about to figure out what your plan is. But I think
we're an attorney.
Yeah, I'm an attorney. I think if I knew anybody right now who was on any sort of benefit from an ACICS school, it would be find a way out. And to that end, the USCIS...
Do they show up to work tomorrow? Those are the questions that are not easy to answer, because you're just saying, "Sam, why are you asking me tough questions?"
I'm not saying that, but I'm thinking it.
You're thinking it, that's for sure. But I'm asking myself those questions. Did the grace period kick in? Did the 60-day grace period kick in? So there's all kind of issues.
Well, that's something I got to say. For all the people going to these ACICS schools, it says that your DSO, the school officer, should be contacting you, giving you information about what happens from here. But yeah, that's a great question. If your school goes under, what happens to your 60-day grace period?
I think it kicks in because it's a visa issue. Forget about the school. But for me, here's the way I look at it. USCIS were so quick to issue this report, which is wonderful, but they must be quickly following with some direction. Yeah. They have to tell people on STEM OPT how would they interpret their EAD, Employment Authorization Document. Is it interpreted? They have to go to their attorneys, and they're going to say, "We're going to take this position, that you're going to receive notice from us that your EAD is canceled, or it's valid until you receive notice." Because if you have an Employment Authorization Document in hand from a school, you have a work authorization. There is something called due process.
Yeah.
And due process is that you have to be informed. This press release doesn't give you due process.
You're entirely right. So I guess what you're referring to, Sam, is anytime you get a benefit from the government, from USCIS, well, congratulations, you've gotten a benefit. And if they want to undo it, they have to go through that formal process, which for them is usually issuing a notice of intent to revoke.
Thank you.
Explaining the reasons. Hey, here's why your EAD is bunk, because the school that is supporting it is out of business. Your EAD is done. That's an interesting point. Yeah. On the other side, I'm going to say, well, can you possibly? You're right. They haven't revoked these things yet. Yep. But can you possibly be maintaining the terms and conditions of your non-immigrant status if you have if your EAD comes from a school and that you're supposed to report to, and you can no longer report to them because
the student reporting requirement occur at a certain milestones. It's
true.
It's not daily.
Well, how about this, Sam? I'll give you one where it becomes immediate. You're changing jobs. You're required to report it.
Right, I agree. But if you haven't changed jobs,
well, you're always allowed to change the facts, Sam. I'm changing the facts.
Correct. But no, I agree with you. If you're changing jobs, you get yourself caught in that. But if you're not changing jobs, I think you continue working. Talk to your attorney on this. This is how we attorneys talk. I just wanted to kind of create...
Usually a little bit louder than that.
I wanted to just create the dialogue between attorneys in our office, and I'm sure many other offices, on legal issues, because we do that all the time.
Yeah.
And obviously, we in search for the best answer for a question. But obviously, the OPT, STEM OPT, is a problem. That is something that you and I will agree on.
Yeah. For sure.
The magnitude and the solution is something that we're probably going to be dealing with in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, and on the bright side, there are In the past, where schools have fallen apart, the government has been generally, I think, pretty nice to the students of them. Even ones from like even ones from like a little bit. Okay, after a little bit of arm twisting by people like Ayla, they usually are fairly nice. But even people, again, I've talked to people. I've been to green card interviews with people who were accused of going to University of Northern Virginia, I think it was, a school that was, closed down by the state that it was in because it was a scam, a fraud, a sham, and basically, people have been able to get green cards after to go into those schools because basically they generally judge you by what you've done, not by what a school's done, which is nice.
So H-1B and I-140 impact, Brian.
Yeah.
So H-1B, obviously, the magic date is the magic date, August of 2022.
Oh, I have a great hypothetical. No, that hypothetical doesn't work. Yeah.
August 19, 2022.
Yeah.
If your degree is expected after that.
Yeah. So the only thing is, I was thinking, in prior years where they had multiple rounds of the H-1B cap, that would have been terrible. You went into you applied in the master's cap, thinking I'm going to get my degree, and then by the time you actually have your degree, your school is no longer accredited. But not one right now because single master's cap this year. But here's the person who I feel bad for. It's the person who got that degree from Stratford University, and after they went not for profit and met their requirements and trying to get in that master's cap, and they missed this year. The next year, not so much.
But if the year in which they got the degree,
that's a good point.
They were both nonprofit and accredited.
Okay, sorry. You're right. When you got it, but how about this? The person who is pursuing a degree program to get that master's degree, and they're halfway through it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's big disruption.
Yeah, it's if you're at students don't really talk to immigration attorneys that much, at least in my experience, because they mostly don't have problems. But it's the sort of thing where, I don't know, if you find your status threatened, I think that's when you start to talk to somebody.
If you're going to university because it's lax, you kind of have grabbed a shovel and dug a hole for yourself. Yeah. Now, you may not fall in it, but you definitely did that. So you got, I think this lesson learned is, I think the whole immigration and even the Department of Education is tired of universities that are marginal.
Well, I have beef with that, Sam. Maybe the Department of Education is, but USCIS would consistently approve changes of status from F1 to H-1B for schools who did things like immediate CPT, for example, or did the seminar style degree programs where you only go to class once a month. And I've seen them. People have come to us for help on those RFEs, and they've been approved. I can't really think, short of somebody not giving the documents, I can't really think of many examples of those cases being denied by USCIS.
So what you're trying to tell me is that USCIS complicit for approving cases they should not have approved? I disagree, respectfully, because I think what USCIS is doing is following the law. And if this U.S. Department of Education is not doing a good job monitoring the accrediting agency, and this agency has been handing out accreditation for non-existing universities, that's how bad it is, okay? And this has been going on since 2016. If it got on the radar in 2015 or thereabout, that means this thing has been going on for a decade or so before.
Well, this decision is not really not about their immigration compliance. There's nothing about immigration in this report or this decision from the Department of Education. Yes, but
it's about an educational system that our foreign students come in reliance on it. They come here and build a career. Yeah. And there's many third parties intervened with statements, and they quoted them in their decision.
To read, yeah.
I'm going to read the New American Higher Education Program. It's critical to consider the second, third, and fourth chances that agency has been given to demonstrate compliance. It has continued to fail to do so. Generation Progress wrote, California Attorney General Office wrote in and said, over the last 5 years, ACICS itself has repeatedly conceded non-compliance. Every time it says it needs 12 more months, and repeatedly misled the department, this committee, the public, and at least one federal court to attempt to maintain its recognition for its own benefit.
Well, so, I mean, all these things point to a problem, Department of Education letting ACICS on a too long a leash and not doing their job and overseeing them, and only now, after several years later, revoking their accrediting authority. Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. You're right, Sam. USCIS, as long as these people are complying with, these schools are complying with the law, they should approve their students. But I mean, the government and the U.S. government is a huge thing. It seems like it's talking out of two sides of its mouth.
Veterans for education success.
Yeah.
Too many veterans, these are the people who fight to defend this country, have been harmed under ACICS watch. So this is not only a foreign students problem, this is a problem on a national level.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think USCIS should be gentle, because the scam or the non-compliance, or maybe it's not a scam, maybe it's a non-compliance or failure to comply, is on such a magnitude, and everybody's caught.
Well, I guess I'll come out and defend USCIS again after being.
We should.
I mean, they did go out. I mean, Homeland Security did go after schools that were problematic in the past, and it was
it's a concern for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I hope the Department of Education gets tougher, but I hope also that our foreign students don't get caught. I think the advice to the foreign students is I'm sorry to say this, but try to get real education. Don't try to get a marginal education.
I don't fault the person who went to the marginal school because it was allowing them to live and work in the United States. I think it's that those loophole schools existed, Sam, is kind of.
But you don't go to school to be allowed to live and work.
Well,
that's not the law.
I think it's the people that it evidences a massive break in the system. I guess that our entire visa system is our 85,000 H-1B visa cap is problematic.
Check with your school. If your school, listen, if your school is in that list of schools that lost its accreditation, because you've heard about it. It's all over campus. Mm-hmm. Because not only is your status maybe in jeopardy, but also everybody else in that school have lost their financial aid now from the government. You're a citizen, I'm talking about, and perhaps also permanent residents. There's no money coming from the government to these schools if they are depending on that accreditation. So the word is going to be out. Immediately contact an attorney of your choice, and immediately pursue a solution to your problem, and do not be lax about this. This is serious if you're considering an education or a career or a future in the U.S. Moving on to anything else?
Well, no. Moving on to the Ombudsman update. So
moving on to the Ombudsman webinar update.
So we talked about this a little bit last week, and people were asking about it, us about it last week, and we didn't really think there was a ton to talk about, but people want to know, and we're going to go through it, and basically what's out there. I guess what's been going on with that. So
yes. So obviously, one of the things that we were asked about, some numbers that were shared with the community, and by the way, we brought the Ombudsman webinar because a lot of you guys were asking about them last week, so we figured we'd talk about it. Some of the numbers that we got from our notes do not match our esteemed listeners' numbers.
Yeah, and it seems like some of the things they said. I guess if I wanted to sum it up, in one sentence, Sam, a lot of the numbers they gave didn't seem to be specific enough to be useful to us
in terms
of updating our analysis on green card availability in the near future.
Okay, so let's look into our notes at least.
Yeah. Okay. So what we were quick to latch onto is they emphasize that Outlook is on a quarterly basis.
Yes.
Meaning.
Yes, and that's. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, a quarterly basis, and that is an important thing. Do you have that chart, Brian?
Your Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, I do. Oops, wrong button.
Because that's important for people to understand. So, for example, if you go to tab 2.
Tab 2. Dang, oops, wrong button. There we are. There we are.
Here you go.
Zoom that in so everybody can see it.
Because I can't even see it myself. So the first quarter is right this number right here.
Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
39,444, 3,944 available green cards for EB to India, which is that 7%. That number, if I can go here, is basically, that is the 7%. That's the 7% of the total employment-based 140,000 and 57,000. We put in 57 because the Ombudsman shared with us that the total is 197,000. That's really the total right here in this box of employment-based green card based on a
spillover of 57,000, right?
57,
from the family, for people who don't remember, from the family preference categories, unused family preference visas that don't get used spill over to the employment-based category the next fiscal year. That's that.
Yeah. The secret sauce is in this column. Anticipated rest of the world demand. Because that number dictates everything else. You change that number, you change everything. And that's where a lot of people are talking about. But as far as the first quarter into January, that number is not going to change, and therefore the visa bulletin will not change until January of 2023.
So essentially, they got the India EB2 got their, for all they got in October 2022 was their 3,900 and some change visas, which is their 7% for the year allocation. And the reason why they won't get any more until the next quarter is because visas have to go unused in other categories for this to happen.
Yes, on a quarterly basis.
Yeah,
so they have to allocate it every quarter, and they're going to say, how many have we used of the 197 per category, which is 28%, subtract India and China, which is backlogged, etc., and then look at fall down and fall across. And that happens in January and will not happen earlier than that. So that's one of the things that they've emphasized is the quarterly outlook. So, January is the next really serious look at the visa bulletin.
Yeah. So one of the things they said is they were prioritizing cases with approved I-140s and current priority dates. They don't look at those whose priority date is earliest at times or prioritize one country over another. Now, this is interesting to me because, people have expressed to me a paranoia that, because I have a pending, EB3 I-140, and even though I did a transfer underlying basis to EB2, I believe that EB3 case is holding up my my green card from getting approved in the EB2 category. And for me, it doesn't sound so crazy.
To me, that sounds crazy.
Well, it sounds because even though policy is really very, very clear that you can transfer underlying basis from a pending case to an approved case, right? How organized do you think USCIS was during the last couple years?
Listen, they've done a great job approving cases.
Yeah.
But this is a problem because I got people with a 2012 priority date that are not approved, and people with 2015 priority date are approved.
Yeah. I guess the point you're making is they can't just go la, forget about I-140s and just approve people pending I-140s, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, and especially when the law says you shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Oh yes, and what does the law say? Let me see if I can. Do we still have it in here? Here, I'll put it up on the screen just to remind everybody here what the law says. Back to the PowerPoint. So on the order of consideration, immigration visas made available under subsection A, family-based or employment-based, shall be issued to eligible immigrants in the order in which a petition on behalf of each immigrant is filed. Is what the law requires.
And therefore, that's basically by priority date.
Yeah, but I guess, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Well, we don't know if they have that priority date until their I-140 has been approved. And your
Well,
kind of point
it's fine.
is,
All of them
approved
approved.
during I-140, then you know.
All those cases are I-140 approved, and they continue to approve 2015 over 2012.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the fact that they approved a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that they used all the visas for sure. Yeah.
But obviously, for those who did not, I have a client who's really frustrated. 2012 priority date, and he says, "I don't know what to do."
Yeah. I know a lot of people in that boat for sure. One thing that came out, and this is something we were kind of predicting, Sam. It's not something I like thinking about, but they said, well, first, if adjustment of status is approved in error, for example, if you were approved in the EB3 category when your EB3 priority date was not current, they want you to call USCIS and put in an inquiry. USCIS will use rescission to fix that error. So,
yes,
that's just, well, first of all, this is something I worried about because if they're approving cases at warp speed, they're going to make some errors. We've already talked to a handful of people who've already encountered those errors, and I don't know. It seems like it's broadcasting that there's more to come.
Yeah, and I cannot tell people not to call because I think your approval is under a cloud for the rest of your life.
That's the metaphor I usually use. You have a little gray cloud hanging over your head, and
a big one too, not a little, a big one, because they can revisit that 7 years from now, 8 years from now. You don't want that. You just need them. You know, I've had cases in which the officer wanted to approve a case, and I stopped him. I said, "You're not ready to approve it." And my client said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I want to get you a green card that will last forever. This officer is about to approve a case, and they don't have all the facts. There's 2 pieces of information you need. Here they are."
Yeah.
When they take us, and now you have everything. Now you can go ahead and approve, but not before. So yeah.
So I know, like a couple months ago, there's a trend to just basically send USCIS, a letter that says, "Approve me in the EB2 category," even though your EB2 job offer wasn't there. In theory, those could be rescinded by USCIS. And you're right. The only way to get a green card and really have a green card is, do it the right way, because they are very happy to make sure to go back and fix their own non-compliance with the law after the fact. I can think of my favorite one is the H-1B cap. Your school wasn't a non-profit school. They were coming after those people, 6-7 years after they got counted in the cap case and saying, "Oops, we got you wrong 7 years ago."
Yes. So let's move quickly because we're getting into the answering session and people don't like running late. But there's a couple of important information.
Yeah.
As of October 3rd. Pending inventory in all categories, but that doesn't make any sense for us. We kind of talked about extensively in the office. For non-India and non-China is more than 40,000. And the shocking thing for us, we talked about over and over again, if the pending inventory for non-India and non-China is 40,000, how did they move 10,000 cases in the last quarter to India? It doesn't make sense.
In the last quarter of fiscal year 2022, they said initially, 51,000 is going to be our India EB2 allocation. And then a month later, another court case has said, it's going to be about 60,000 for India EB2. And again, if they didn't get 40,000 cases from the rest of the world overnight, which means, good if you're from India, but
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense
because they have to approve the rest of the world before they approve India or China. But it looks like they went ahead and approved more India and China. And then 40,000, the rest of the world is waiting. And that's based on the approval and the movement of India in the last quarter. That's how we predicted a more aggressive visa bulletin.
Well,
and then
their failure to touch those cases and do right by those cases kind of creates a slingshot in the visa bulletin. So they go, suddenly we have a bunch of demand from the rest of the world, and that's going to create a retrogression. And it says they moved the visa bulletin too aggressively to move ultimately.
Well, not only did they move it too aggressively, they also approved cases that should have gone for the rest of the world, and that's how we base our projection. When we found an aggressive 10,000 movement of visas to India in the last quarter, we said, "Wow, they've emptied the warehouses of the rest of the world."
They had tons of visas this year. They gave them to everybody. Everybody who has a green card wants one. Yeah.
2 months later.
Yeah.
They found a warehouse of 40,000 green cards they haven't touched.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the Ombudsman analysis. It's really not enough. It's just enough to get us frustrated and to be confused, not enough to project any new dates.
Yeah, I have one thing before we move on to our sort of queue and just the more general stuff. Department of State, they gave us an update. They gave a report on their visa issuance statistics for fiscal year 2022 and their outlook for 2023. So they say that they are back at full pre-pandemic capacity. And we think that means it's not likely that there's going to be any significant visa spillover from family preference cases to employment-based categories at the end of this coming fiscal year, for the next fiscal year. Why? Because spillover comes from unused family preference visas. Family preference visas are mostly issued through the consulates abroad. If the consulates abroad are at full function, they're issuing tons of family preference visas. If those family preference visas are issued to family preference categories, they are not available to roll over into the employment categories.
And the pain begins again.
Yeah, it's kind of a punch in the gut, in terms of, what we were seeing in terms of visa bulletin movement.
And looking at Congress, it's an election time. Nobody wants to talk about legislation now. Until the new Congress comes in, we know exactly who's controlling what.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
It's not too hard to see who the players are who want some sort of immigration reform and don't. It's basically if those folks have power in Congress, that's how you know to see if anything's possible.
If Grassley's not going to, the Republicans not likely to take over the Senate. It doesn't look like it. I don't know. I don't predict.
You don't have to wait much longer. Election days tomorrow. I'm going to go vote. That's for sure.
And if he's there, he is the number one anti-H-1B, and he is on the Judiciary Committee. Good luck getting something through this guy if he's back in power.
Yeah.
So let's hope that whoever is elected this time around is a little bit more sympathetic, and we can get some good results with a new Congress, and we'll be back in a minute to answer all your questions. All right, this is the time when we jump in and try to answer as many of your questions as possible. Just a few reminders. We give you a general answer based on a very general question, and it's really an overall flavor, of what to expect. There is no attorney-client relationship established as a result of this. You're always entitled to choose, and you should always choose an attorney of your choice to represent you before you make any immigration decision. Please do not make a life-changing or an immigration decision based on listening to us. Please consult with a competent attorney. And with that, let's take the first one. I got here a Sanfax asking you a question with a smiley face.
It's not a question. It's a sort of a glowing compliment, which I'm going to, of course, absorb. Hello, Sam and Brian. Good evening. Looking sharp as always.
We love those compliments.
Yeah.
Give him one of these.
Clapping.
Clapping. Yeah, why not?
Clapping.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. We really got to reprogram these buttons, Sam. Find some more appropriate sound effects. I don't know.
So what's the top left one?
Okay, top left is rock music. We have laughing, clapping, a wah-wah, rim shot, detective, birds, and magic. So you and I sat down and looked through these things probably like 4 or 5 months ago, and half of those things don't have any meaning to me anymore.
Yes. Rajini Gupta, I am in India, H-1B approved. Employer gave only a copy of the approval notice, not stamp. If I switch to a new employer, can the old employer revoke H-1B? If H-1 gets revoked, what are my options? Okay, so you touch on an excellent question.
Yeah, this is a very cool, very deep dive H-1B question.
And that is something that we see a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with the basic rule, and then maybe we'll dive into the practical side of it. Because for that question, there is really two sides. There is what the law says and what we see USCIS do, and we will share both.
They can get to interpret the law as long as they keep on, but go ahead.
Yes, yeah. So basically, you are not, you remain H-1B cap subject If you do not have either an I-94, an H-1B I-94, and in the U.S. on that I-94, or maybe not in the U.S.
Yeah, I believe it's granted status.
So you have to be in the U.S.
Granted the status, or having gotten a visa stamp.
Or the second one is have a stamp from the consulate. So if you have a stamp from the consulate, or you have an I-94 with a status, like you're here in the U.S. on an I-94, then you are no longer cap subject. So at the face of it, right now, you remain an H-1B cap subject. And if the employer revokes your H-1B and their H-1B is revoked, that really takes away any opportunity to make any changes. Now, once you jump to the practical side, what we see.
Practically speaking, based upon these limited facts, I believe there's a reasonable chance that USCIS would take a new H-1B petition for an individual in this scenario and approve the case. They do not seem to look in the issue of whether or not you've been issued an I-94 or been granted the status or have a visa stamp. Essentially, they seem to take a very liberal view, which is the kind of what I think everybody thinks the answer is. Once your H-1B cap is approved, you're no longer subject to the cap, and that's how they actually seem to apply it. And
or the way they interpret it is that the change of employer before you come in can happen even though you're
basically it's fine. You'll get a stamp through the new company.
Yes. So there is a chance now. If it is revoked by the prior employer, and I don't think there is a chance that you may have a problem getting the transfer to the new employer.
Yeah.
So the sooner you move, and the new employer to revoke your H-1B, typically they're not motivated to do that immediately because obviously they're trying to find a job for you right now, and because they want to call you, so they're not going to run and revoke it right away. So you might want to be proactive and quick in trying to have it transferred to a different employer, and then come into the United States with someone that has a job for you.
This scenario is something for an employer, I would say. I'll give you a warning that in theory the government can challenge this, but practically speaking, those companies go forward and From San Facts, my spouse is primary on I-45. I got EAD January 2022. Never used it for employment yet. I was employed on H-1B and got laid off in June of 2022. I'm yet to find a new job. Can I file for CA unemployment benefits?
Okay, is that CA California, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an interesting question.
And I'm going to we'll read the second part here. Will this cause any issues with our I-45 adjudication? I read that claiming unemployment insurance is not considered public charge. This is a topic of importance with the recent tech layoffs. Yeah, I was hearing a lot about this.
An excellent, and I think we probably should give a good dive on this topic.
Yeah.
Next time around. That's an excellent topic. I'm going to give you the short answer. I have not looked at the California rules, and it needs to be looked at by a competent attorney to help you out with this decision. Your reading and your interpretation is in line with the reasonably correct interpretation. And the reason being is unemployment compensation is an insurance policy, is a government-managed insurance policy. We as employers pay into it. We pay into this insurance policy. And if there's unemployment claim against the company, the government will pay the employee money to compensate them for, let's say, for the termination, if it's not for cause, for a reasonable period of time, depending on the state and the federal rules. And my premium goes up as a result. So my next premium for the insurance or for the unemployment insurance goes up because it's really managed completely like an insurance. So it is not a public money that is contributing. Now, having said that, there is a number of months, a number of period after which federal funds may kick in. And if the federal funds kick in, you need to be careful. So you have to understand, and every state has different rules and different funds and pots of funds that they use. So you have to be careful. If federal funds kick in and compensating you, now you may be in a situation you have to be super careful.
Yeah.
But this is a topic that we really need to have a session on for everybody to understand.
When I think about a question like this, I immediately say, the devil's in the details. Tell me exactly what the name of the program is, and then I'm going to have to go do some research before I can really give a fantastic answer on that one. Yeah.
Yes. So hopefully that gives you some guideline.
Yeah. Keep it moving on here. Hi, Sam and Brian. I know there's a question from this individual, so I'll skip down a little bit and get to it. Came October 2021 and visa stamp until October 2024. Got I-94 until end of 2022 because of passport expiration. Now I have a new amendment until 2025. Got a passport renewed as well. Can I travel on old stamp?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can definitely travel on old stamp.
That's the general rule. They will honor the stamp from, doesn't have to say your current employer's name on it. An H-1B stamp.
Well, also he has a new passport. So he has.
Oh, yeah.
So he has two passports. You present the stamp from the old passport and the new passport, along with your R-797. All three documents will process you in the U.S.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go back to the ones we skipped here. So,
based on your number calculations, how many green cards do you think EB2 India will receive in fiscal year 2023? Well, that's the magic. That's the. Let's get that. Put that on the screen again.
Yeah, let me go back to.
And I played with these numbers a little bit, so that may not be the most. So if you go back to the first tab, Brian, on green card allocation. So the rest of the world is where the problem is. So our prediction that 48,454 in bold reflect the higher number of approved I-140s. Remember when we saw a ridiculous number of approved I-140? Mm-hmm. So, and then that's a two-factor. See that number 2 on top, right here. That shows, I should probably point here, right? That 2 is the multiplier that we use because for every I-140 there is a husband and wife. We said it's going to be 2. We think the population of the rest of the world is a little bit younger. So some people are single, some people have 1 kid, so it's a 2 multiplier. With that, the numbers are not very positive, but we don't know what these numbers are, whether these are accurate or not. We've changed them so many times, but with that shows a not very strong
there it is.
Numbers. Yeah. So it shows that there will be 7,700 green cards in the January, similar number in April, and July, and then September coming in.
And that's your total up there, though, for the year, though, 34,902 for that's in the EB2. Is that your present guesstimate?
Correct. And the EB3 is substantially less promising for a similar calculation.
And that's 11,000 and some change there. So that's significantly less than what we saw in the prior fiscal year. Again, about 60,000 went to EB2 India, and that number, which is with the total adjustments available for India under the assumption that I gave here, and we've increased that number significantly. Yeah. Is that there will be? Oops, sorry. How did I jump from here to here on the screen? There.
Probably help me out here.
Sure.
I can't get to it.
Got that floating taskbar. There we are.
So there's 46,000 green cards available for India, EB2 and EB3 to process, which is enough to get you probably back to 2014.
Yeah, I think maybe we're not going to. I think they said they had a 46,000. Yeah, so
to clear the inventory, but not beyond. But again,
it should be pretty close to clear the inventory, which seems to mean that they can get back to about December 2014, which isn't too shabby. Obviously, I would prefer if they just stayed there the entire time.
Because we were thinking 6 months forward movement before we heard about all these ridiculous numbers of 40,000 pending inventory from rest of the world. Yeah, that's a ridiculous number. Yeah, and that is built in here. Yeah. So we don't know. That's the
projection. That 34,000. It's significantly less than less than what we saw the year that just closed, and that was about 60,000 per USCIS.
Yes. Let's take the next question.
Yes, sir. Let me see here. I think we may have skipped this one, so let's get to it. I have EB2 EAD, priority date April 2014, but currently on H-1B with employer. With hybrid work situation, should I submit amendment with home address or is it not needed? So it depends on what your home address. So H-1Bs allow you to work in an MSA that's covered by your LCA that's certified by the Department of Labor. If your home address is in the same area, MSA, as your work address, you may not need an amendment. But if you are going to be working from an address that's not in the same MSA as your home address, there you go. That's the same as your office address. You might need 2 LCAs in your H-1B. So talk to your employer, because your employer's obligation is to file an H-1B when anytime there's a change in work site or there's a need additional work site that's outside the MSA. Basically, let them know all the places you're going to work, and they will talk to your immigration counsel to make sure there's an H-1B case H-1B petition approved and covering them.
Yes, and that's a good summary. There's a little bit more to it, but it's a good summary of the situation.
I think we got this one already. Yep.
Right.
So let's keep on going. So, app name that says hi. Change of employer after getting green card is it's a topic of conversation for sure.
So we spend a lot of time talking about that.
Yeah.
If the opportunity to move out to a new employer is after the green card, I mean, it's before the green card approval, it's an issue. After the green card is less of an issue. The question is, in my mind, has it been 180 days since the adjustment filing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking the same thing, but in a different way. I'm saying, is it clear that you took that? That's a good point. 180 days since adjustment filing. I just want to make sure that there's evidence out there that you took that green card in good faith. When you filed that I-140, you intended to take that job because, in theory, this falls in the list of things. The traps was a topic of last week. They don't bring this up, but in theory, if you apply for naturalization down the road, they can say, well, you got your green card through XYZ Inc., yeah, and you got your green card on February 1st, yeah, and you left that company on February 2nd,
That's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
anyway.
there's a lot of scenarios in which it's justified. For example,
Sure.
You're not working in the labor certification job description, you're not being paid the labor certification wage. All these things are justifiable reason to leave immediately. And if the adjustment, 180 days have passed, and after the green card was issued, the opportunity to change employment was presented, or your attempt to look for another job should occur after the green card is issued, I think you probably make a good case. If you're getting close to making a decision, because this is an important issue, consult with an attorney of your choice. Get a consultation.
Yeah, that's a consult I have done before, for sure. Yeah.
Consult with an attorney of your choice, hey, I'm going to give you the facts. Give me your opinion, and get a consultation so you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
All right, next one, Brian.
Yes. So from Chandra, any movement expected with December visa bulletin?
The answer is no.
No.
Because of what we've described earlier is that there's 3,944 allocation in October, and the next bunch of allocation will happen in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are. My priority date is April 2015, EB2 India. Any chance of my date getting current this year?
We hope so. We don't know for sure.
Brian a couple months ago would say, I think that's a good possibility. So it wouldn't blow my mind.
Brian of today?
Brian of today says, what do you mean by this year? Do you mean October 2023? Maybe.
This fiscal year.
I wasn't talking about this fiscal year. He or she did not specify what year.
I did.
Okay.
For her or him?
This fiscal year, I don't think it's very, very likely anymore. I think, we're probably going to settle by the end of the fiscal year next September, somewhere in 2014.
With 40,000 inventory rest of the world. But I'm not sure what that number is. We talk about, they give you numbers. It's so ridiculous. I mean, they should just stop giving vague numbers. I mean, this 40,000 rest of the world, are these I-140 approved? Are they 40 not approved?
Yeah.
We don't know anything. We don't know anything about that number.
Well, here's what, learning from, you've been doing this job longer than me, but one of the big things I've learned, Sam, is people get frustrated with the government due to lack of information. Lack of clarity as to when something's going to happen. I imagine everybody would be really happy if they just put up a list of priority dates up there and put your name in the list and say, you're 3,004th in line. It would stink to know, it stinks to be 3,004th in line, but you could watch, every person get a green card in front of you. People don't like that there's no information. They don't have clarity as to what to expect, and that's the visa bulletin. It's never going to give that consistently.
Yes. Do you have a sense of how the election could impact immigration? Is a Republican-led Senate and House better to pass legal immigration laws? Could tomorrow benefit Indians stuck in the green card wait? That's a great question. So I can only reflect on my prior history. I cannot predict tomorrow.
If you are able to predict what politicians will do, well, you can be a rich.
Exactly, you'll be a millionaire, right? And you quit doing what you're doing and go on vacation every day.
Yeah.
So Republican administration has been very business, with the exception of the Trump administration, to be very honest. The Trump administration has been a disaster for immigration. It's been a horrible situation.
You guys were there,
Yeah. Unfortunately, employers made tons of money because employees were hunkered down and stuck, afraid to file H-1B transfers because they don't want to get denied. Mm-hmm. They wanted to triple the wage. Basically, they wanted half of the H-1Bs out of the country. Take that one out. That's not representative of anything.
Yeah, that's an outlier data point. Yeah.
Republicans have been reasonable on immigration.
Yeah.
But we would not have a Republican. We will have a Republican Senate or Congress and a Democratic president. And if they don't play politics, they should be able to work things out. I don't think they're capable of not paying. I think we're so polarized in this country that I don't see anything.
We have seen demonstrated, bipartisan support for fixing this backlog in some degree. It's just it hasn't been able to gel and coalesce into something that everybody can agree upon. And well, that's it. The closest we've gotten, it was last fall around this time. Biden and his Build Back Better thing. They had a massive recapture provision in that, which would have dumped a whole bunch of visas, and it went kaput. So
the way government acts, the way Congress acts, is very reactionary. Bar a crisis, nothing happens. So let's assume an H-1B guy here in the U.S. Was laid off by Twitter, or was laid off by somebody, and this H-1B guy left the U.S. and a year later was found in Australia or Canada, and he invented the next internet. And Congress will be shocked that that happened to them, that they drove a guy from here to another country to invent the X internet, squared, whatever that may be.
I think it's some sort of jetpack.
Then they will act. Yeah. Then they will act and say, oh, wow, how did we drop the ball? Then they will do something. So unfortunately, unless there is a massive earthquake, I just don't see the Republicans and the Democrats getting together to solve a problem.
Yeah, I can't predict politics very well. I'm terrible at it, but I do know enough to know that neither side likes seeing the other side get a win.
Yes.
Yeah,
and that's the problem.
And that's huge. Yeah,
and that's the problem.
Does either side want to see the other side lock up an a smart, well-earning, educated group of people who are fresh, voters in a couple years? I don't think one side wants to see the. I mean, I'm going to be real cynical. Do you want to not be the party that lets a bunch of new people come to the United States who are going to be eventual voters?
We got so close last time, and I'll remember this name, Manchin. Okay, this guy, okay, the dumbest Democrat on earth, okay, destroyed the whole legislation.
Yeah.
Destroyed the dreams of hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants by his, honestly, total stupidity. So we got so close, and now we're back again.
Yeah, yeah. He's a Democrat, so I can't really, we can't really.
He's the worst type of Democrat.
Yeah.
He's a. I mean, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You're just the worst type of politician because there were things there that were so important to do, and he killed it.
Yeah.
Next question.
Yeah. From Shika 119. Hello, I am primary and priority date 2013 November. Got my EAD. Can I take a 3-month vacation without pay while still employed with the same employer? Loss of pay, will that impact the green card process?
Well, it all comes down to whether or not there's a bona fide job offer for you.
Yeah.
You could take a non-pay for 3 months, but if you get interviewed shortly thereafter, they're going to be uncomfortable.
It's going to make them go, huh?
Friday 2013.
They're still, okay, I mean, they're interviewing people right now who don't have current priority dates. I've been to a lot of interviews in the last couple of months, and 50% of them, people, late 2012, probably a couple early 2013 priority dates.
So you can have some kind of a leave of absence with the contemplation that you can terminate that at any time you request it. If there's an interview with USCIS, now, you terminate and you go back to work, but obviously you don't want to be accused of playing games. So it's a tough one. If your priority date is 2015 or 2016, I'll be more comfortable. 2013 is too close for comfort, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, your green card is always supposed to have a bona fide job offer underlying it, and anything that could, could allow a government officer to chip away at that and ask the question. I imagine if you told them during an interview you're on a 3-month paid leave or unpaid leave, I'd say they'd probably want to issue an RFE if you're lucky, basically requesting, I want to see documentation of that because you're supposed to be.
Because the question is paid leave, unpaid leave is really something you requested or something that the employer forced you to do. And if you have, for example, God forbid, an ailing mom, or a litigation overseas, or a religious reason you want to go to do something, to meditate, whatever. If you can document that, then you might be better off. Let's take the next one. We're hitting 8 o'clock and we're being a little bit...
7 o'clock, we haven't fixed our...
7 o'clock.
What time is it? I don't know. This daylight savings time is going to mess me up. So from Neela, will child age be locked if EB3 I-140 is pending and interfiled to EB2 with approved I-140? Final action date was current in September 2022.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, it's locked because when you do interfiling, you have to use final action date. And the other one, right?
Child Status Protection Act, if you watch me do it, I do it. And this is what I learned from you. It's, we're charting out all the numbers and all the dates.
Here's why I say yes, but consult always with an attorney. If you interfiled, the final action date was current.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I see what you're saying.
So you have to have, if you interfile into that category, and then again, the child will be locked in EB3 I-140 is pending, and interfile to EB2 with approved I-140. So so clearly in the I-140 is locked in, whether on the EB3 I-1 locked under EB3. She's not in EB3 to begin with. She's in EB2.
Yeah. So the general rule being, if you have a filed adjustment with a current approved I-140, that date you've been locked in. And basically, I guess what you're saying is in September 2022. If you've transferred underlying basis in there to a category which your priority date was current, you took your pending adjustment there, probably locked in.
If the TUB was done correctly.
Yeah, that was what's kicking around in my head. If somebody did it right, yeah.
If the TUB is done correctly, it can only be done when the final action date is current for you, and therefore it locks the child status, assuming your child was under 21 on that date, or 21.
Based upon the pending time of your I-140, which you have to really go back and look at their notices for. Complicated question, I told you.
Yes. Well, of course, I created complication to make you happy, Brian.
I'm not happy unless it's complicated.
That's true. But correct. Brian's 100% right. The devil is in the details.
I like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
With that, it's 7:04. Brian, you're about to take another question. Let's take one more, and then let's call it a day.
Okay, let us take one more.
Yeah.
Saying facts. USCIS mentioned it is possible to recapture the 67,000 visas wasted in fiscal year 2021 and has been done twice in the past. Any advice on how we can organize and push for this? Is it just a regulation or EA?
Something action?
Executive action. Executive action.
Yeah. So, well, getting organized, I mean, I'm an attorney. Getting organized is something you guys need to do. And I will be happy to guide an organized group of you in any way. When the lawsuits through IT-Serve started to undo the H-1B unfairness, this office was incredibly instrumental. We provided almost 1/3 of the plaintiffs out of this office that overturned the H-1B law, and also provided at no charge to IT-Serve support for reviewing, advising their very competent litigation team. And we're happy to do that here. I mean, for me, we always pay forward. We believe in that.
Yeah.
Now,
I can tell you one way this was on the plate before. I mentioned earlier, it was part of the Build Back Better bill.
The analysis by the experts is that it can be done through administrative procedure, but I don't think anybody wants to do that. Looks like nobody has the appetite to do that. But the decoupling of the beneficiaries from the primaries, for example, that can be done by interpretive action.
So you're talking about decoupling. You're talking about, okay, visa. There's 10 visas available, right? And 2 families of 5 would take up all those, right?
Yes.
Instead, if you only count the primary, 10 primaries and all their families would be able to take those instead.
So there's a lot that they can do to help, but there's no focus. USCIS is incredibly overwhelmed. They're high-fiving. They're still intoxicated by the party they threw after they approved all these green cards last year. They still have a hangover. They haven't even awakened from that, let alone handle this year or do something creative, So, I mean, it's a mess. But yes, a lot can be done administratively or through executive action, which is basically can be subject to lobbying, the right kind of lobbying, but it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. With that, we end today's session. Great discussions. Guys, bring your great questions. For those that we weren't able to get to your questions, we always love to have you come back and throw in your questions, and hopefully we can get to you next